Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Another busy news day. Glad you're with us. Good, bad, and crazy martinis. And Jim, we already had this as the good martini, and just before we started recording here, the martini got even better. This is all stemming from last night's second and final Virginia governor's debate between Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin, and the issue came up about parental involvement in what goes on at school. Obviously, if you've been following the debates in Virginia or elsewhere around the country, big school board fights about masks and vaccines and critical race theory and pronouns. It's been a big issue here in the Northern Virginia suburbs, and Glenn Youngkin would be very smart to tap into that, and Terry McAuliffe opened the door wide last night. So this was the exchange during the debate last night, which ends with Terry McAuliffe telling you how much he thinks you as a parent should have input into what goes on in your local schools.
Veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it, also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
And Jim, the Youngkin campaign is certainly not missing this opportunity. They've already turned out a 30-second spot. Given some of the comments from parents at school board meetings here, there's a few words you might not want your little kids to hear, so just be careful on that. But this is a very powerful 30-second spot from Glenn Youngkin.
We watched parents so upset because there was such sexually explicit material in the library.
I decided to check the titles at my child's school. Both of these books include pedophilia, graphically describes engaging in fellatio with male minors.
You vetoed the bill that would have informed parents that they were there.
Yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
I'm Glenn Youngkin, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad.
And those clips of the parents talking about that graphic literature, that was from the last week in Fairfax County here in Northern Virginia. So, Jim, it's going to be hard for Glenn Youngkin to win. The polls show that he certainly has a shot. We just talked about one last week among likely voters that even has him ahead. He's got to get people fed up with Terry McAuliffe. He's got to get people in Northern Virginia, at least in better numbers than in recent cycles, to get on his side. And I can't think of a better issue for him to do it.
You know, Greg, to quote one of Terry McAuliffe's good close friends, you're going to want to put some ice on that because this ad is just brutal and it uses his own words against him. I think the quotes from the parents are very powerful. For those wondering, it is accurately described. You hear like, oh, parents are complaining about a book in the library. What is this, Catcher in the Rye again? What's going on? And then you, oh my, no, like if you, it is exactly as they describe. It's I have no idea what nut job school librarian looked at it and thought that was great, or maybe they bought it based on the title and didn't really think it, whatever it is, it just does not belong in a school library. And if you want to buy it for your kid, fine, that's your decision, but that is just not, it was just flat out, it's adult material, just doesn't belong in a school library. But then McAuliffe, to just put it so bluntly, I don't think parents should be telling the schools what they should teach. What does he think parents are always to do? Just turn your children over to the state and let us decide. You can't be trusted with the education of your own children. It really is just inadvertently. I think it's the old definition of a Kinsey gaffe from Michael Kinsey, the journalist who went off to run Slate many years ago. When a politician gets in trouble by accidentally telling the truth. I think that is genuinely what Terry McAuliffe feels like, that, look, there are people with education degrees who know what's best for your kids. And if they think a book with pedophilia in it is good for them, then by golly, who are you to object? And of course, that's not what most parents feel like. And, most people see education of their children as a partnership in that, and ultimately the parents have the final say. And for what it's worth, my kids in Fairfax County Public Schools myself, they're really good at sending all kinds of permission slips anytime they want to do sex education. They're doing a suicide talk at my son's high school this week, and they're very good. Look, this is what we're going to teach. We hope it's okay. If you'd like to opt your student out, that's fine. They're usually pretty good about this stuff. It's because they recognize and respect that, parents have a say in this, and different parents will have different ideas of what's appropriate to teach their kids at different ages. I haven't seen anything I really object to in the curriculum so far, but theoretically I could and say, you know what? No, I don't want my son's getting taught that stuff. We'll teach that issue at home. And that's the way it ought to be. And Terry McAuliffe just doesn't understand any of this. And he just kind of comes across as this arrogant jerk who I think, again, I think he's still the favorite, but this is the nice kind of galvanizing issue that could help Youngkin in the Northern Virginia suburbs.
Exactly. And early voting's already started in Virginia. I've seen some stories that Republicans are actually doing better in early voting turnout, which is not usually the case here or in most places. And if he can really get folks focused on this issue, it's been a major headline grabber in Northern Virginia. But, you know, the last few cycles, it's been very lopsided for the Democrats. So turnout's going to be a big part of it, as well as intensity on the issue. But Jim, you know, a few years ago, we were kind of making fun of the gadflies on this issue. I remember the MSNBC promo with Melissa Harris Perry, where she was saying, we can't continue this notion that kids belong to their parents. They belong to the collective. And we're like, oh, man, these people are off the fringe. But now it's becoming more mainstream. You're hearing it from major party candidates, at the gubernatorial level, and we're hearing it in policy discussions as well. In fact, there's a lot of people on the right, and I don't think that they're entirely wrong, who think that this plan for Biden to pay for your daycare and then pay for preschool starting at age 3 and then pay for everything all the way through community college is the way for the government to raise your kids instead of you.
Greg, when Harris Perry made that infamous statement, I'm trying to remember, was that when she had the tampon earrings on? Yeah, it's tough to take someone seriously like that. But let's also not forget that this entire conversation occurs against the backdrop of the pandemic and keeping schools, at least here in Fairfax County, closed for an entire year, with a lot of debates about whether it could have been done earlier, whether it could have been done more days of the week. Now, credit where it's due, kids are back 5 days a week starting this fall. But, there was a real frustration on the part of parents that private schools were managing to do this and schools in other parts of the country had figured out how to do this. Why are you sticking so many kids in this remote learning, which was not working for them? And I think we can all, despite the insistence of the teachers unions and all these folks during this entire time, remote learning was an educational disaster for lots and lots of kids. Not every last kid. If your kid thrived in it, great. But by and large, the poorest and most at risk and vulnerable kids were absolutely left behind by this. So there's already tension between teachers and school administrators on one side and parents on the other, because parents believe that teachers effectively opted out of doing their jobs for the better part of the year. Then they insisted they should go to the front of the line for vaccinations, which most people didn't have too much of a problem with. But then they had to have mandates to get them last time. Wait a minute, if you get to be first in line, everybody should be going to get vaccinated. You can't do any of this but I don't feel like it, So there's just been this enormous frustration building towards, I would say more specifically teachers unions than teachers. But in the context of this idea of, no, educating your kids is a job for teachers to decide. You parents don't get any say in this. It's going to play terrible for Terry McAuliffe. And Greg, it couldn't happen to a better guy.
What's also fun is that McAuliffe rejected one of Youngkin's proposed debates, and so that was the last one. They're not going to bring this up again face to face. They've still got a month plus to lob ads at each other.
McAuliffe doesn't have a chance to say. What I meant to say is that parents are totally involved in this.
Yeah, couldn't happen to a worse guy. All right, let's talk about something just as wonderful, and that's the fact that as we do this podcast here on Wednesday, Jim is once again very comfortably ensconced in his X chair. And Jim, I assume it still continues to delight.
It does. I'm going to rock back and forth in it. It doesn't squeak, so you can't really hear it, unfortunately. Here's the thing. Does it look good? Yes. Does it sound good? Is it so quiet? Yes. What is it? Here's the thing. It feels good. It feels good on my butt. Feels good on my back. Feels good on my shoulders. I have no issues of, neck or shoulder tension or mouse arm or any of those things that, you can have. And, as I've mentioned, particularly during the pandemic, people were working from home. If you're used to working at a desk in a workplace and all of a sudden you try to work on the kitchen table or maybe at a table in Starbucks or something like that, all of a sudden you begin to realize this is not the chair you're used to. And you can develop all kinds of back issues and soreness and tension and all kinds of stuff like that. So look, you want to take care of your back. You want to take care of your whole body, particularly if your job is going to require you to be sitting for a long stretch. That's why you want the X chair. It is a completely worthwhile investment, taking care of yourself, making work easier, and just knowing that at any given moment, I can just say, you know what, I'm going to reach down to these buttons in the back. I'm going to press the little massage option. Feel a little cool, I want to warm it up back there, I can press that button. Feeling a little warm, I want to cool it down back there, I can press that button. It is worth it. It makes work so much easier. And I wish everybody in the world had one of these chairs.
Try X Chair for yourself, risk-free for 30 days. Once you realize how much better your chair should be, you'll never go back. Go to xchairmartini.com now. That's the letter X, chair, MARTINI.com for $100 off your order. X-Chair has a 30-day guarantee of complete comfort. xchairmartini.com. All right, Jim, on to our second good martini here. And I still feel like there has to be at least a bad component here because the Democrats are probably going to come to some sort of solution here, which is going to be bad news ultimately. But right now, watching the moderates, what few remain in Congress, fight with the progressive wing of the party is absolutely delicious. And it's all coming to a head here. We're nearly at the end of the fiscal year. We've got the Democrats scrambling to raise the debt ceiling and to fund the government. And what you really have here is the two factions of the party battling over whether to do the infrastructure bill first or to do the massively bloated $3.5 trillion bill, which is really $5 trillion, to do that first. The progressives insist on doing the Democratic wish list, $3.5 trillion bill first. The moderates insist on getting the infrastructure bill passed. That's already passed the Senate. And so we're at loggerheads here. Kyrsten Sinema insists that she's not budging on anything. She doesn't like the $3.5 trillion price tag anyway, but she insists that the House pass the infrastructure bill first. The progressives say, no, we got to pass the reconciliation bill first with all of our wish lists and get that done. Then we'll do infrastructure. And basically, because of the thin margins on both sides of Capitol Hill, nothing right now looks like it's going to get done super soon.
My boss, Rich Lowry, had a very sharp observation on this about why you might feel like the coverage of these endless negotiations on Capitol Hill feel excessive and why it feels like everybody's trying to read the tea leaves, and every stray comment from Manchin or Sinema or PayPal or Pelosi always seems, Schumer, everybody goes into a tizzy every time they offer some remark that seems to be hinting one way or the other. Rich observed that the things you see right before a deal completely collapses and the majority party has this enormously humiliating and embarrassing defeat, and the sort of things you see right before they actually get a bill passed and they actually have this major legislative accomplishment are the exact same things. You always have the same last minute holdouts and demands and posturing, and one of two things happen. Either you get 218 people together in the House, or I guess at this point with 3 vacancies, I guess they only need 217. Either you get 50 plus 1 in the Senate, and then you got your deal, or you don't. And if you don't, it really will be a utterly humiliating, not just a humiliating, I think people are generally saying a presidency defining defeat for Biden, in part because they spent almost the entire year. This was the big thing that they took on after the COVID relief bill, which I think lulled a lot of Democrats into a sense of how easy this was going to be. And I think at the heart of this real despair, yes, there's you could say Manchin's being different. Look, the first problem is that the Democrats only have 50 votes in the Senate, which means any senator can say, I want this, or I'm not voting with you. And that's the reality. That's one of those things where you've now given veto power to every last one of them. Sinema and Manchin, by the way, are getting a lot of grief. They're being the lightning rods. But there are the Maggie Hassans, there are the Kellys out there who actually aren't that far away from their perspective and who would like to see a much lower total price tag on the bill. The second thing is, if you look at the Democratic Party, on paper, 2020 was a great year for them. Look, they got the House, they got the Senate, and they got the presidency. But the only thing that really united all Democrats in 2020 was the ardent belief that Donald Trump should no longer be president. After that, there was some space among them. What unites a Joe Manchin obviously is extremely different from an AOC. And some of it's not just on how big bills should be or how much spending should be. It's also like, what are your priorities? What is your the progressive left really wanted to transform America. They didn't really want just another big spending bill. They did not want the Obama stimulus 2.0. Manchin and Sinema, they're not conservatives. They're fine with additional spending, but they do hear the concerns about inflation. They do hear the concerns about, what happens if we dump too much money into the economy and there just isn't enough goods, and all of a sudden this ends up, exacerbating an inflation problem that people are starting to really notice these days. So here's the good news of this good martini. I think the odds of this crashing is pretty good right now. There's just a lot of, in the end, they've been doing this for 8 months. They never really got around the fundamental question. What is it you actually want to do? What is the one thing you can get 218 or 217 House Democrats to agree on, all 50 House Democrats to agree on, and the administration to agree on? No, by the way, I think Biden and Pelosi both just want a deal. They just want something. So I think it is likely, and I can be completely wrong on this. I think at some point in the next couple of days, the effort fails. They don't have the votes. They have a lot of egg on their face. The bad news of this scenario for conservatives who don't like all the spending, who basically see this as the best case scenario, is that I think it would be such a humiliating defeat. It would be such a motivational catastrophe for their base. It would be it would be the fine, as a Jet fan, I'll make the comparison. You'll compete. It's the butt fumble of legislative efforts, right? That they're going to end up feeling a need to say, okay, let's pass something. And I think what's very likely is not only would they get something like the BIF, the bipartisan infrastructure framework, whatever it is, they probably would get something else. That would be much less than progressives wanted, but I think there'd just be such humiliation out of all this that they'd be desperate to save face and be able to say they did something. And in a very strange way, I think that might unite Democrats in a way that this current state does not.
Very good point. My advice to House Republicans, if they do bring the infrastructure bill first, don't help.
No, what are you doing? Opponent is self-destructing. Just stand there. Don't do anything.
The Senate Republicans didn't get that memo, apparently. But if they don't have the votes to do it on their own, don't allow this back and forth process to keep going. Pramila Jayapal, you mentioned her from Washington. She's head of the House Progressive Caucus. She tweeted last night, "It's not the infrastructure bill, then maybe the Build Back Better package down the road. That wasn't the deal. Progressives won't back down." Cue the Tom Petty music. And, Jim, my advice would be the same to her and Kyrsten Sinema. Don't you give in. You stand your ground. I want to see that principle.
This is not a time to compromise. Yeah. But genuinely, the progressive fears are legitimate. That if you are Manchin or Sinema, or even, the Kellys or any of those, and you pass the bipartisan infrastructure framework, good. The president gets a big bipartisan win. He gets to demonstrate, and it's 1.2 trillion. It's probably bigger than you and I would want, but it's not, compared to the 6.5 trillion or 3.5 trillion numbers being thrown around. It's not that bad. And it's the sort of thing where maybe not just, Manchin and Sinema, but maybe Kelly, maybe Hassan, maybe a bunch of Senate Democrats, Tester up in Montana, maybe they're like, it's okay. That's good. Let's wait until next year. Inflation's looking bad. Let's make sure, there's no incentive to then go take the hard vote. There's some people say, oh, no, you got to take the easy vote first. That builds momentum, and then you do the hard one. And the House Progressive has a really reasonable point. Once we've done the easy thing, it's much easier for people to jump off the wagon and say, no, I'm not going to do the hard thing.
Wow. A lot to unfold here in the coming days. Let's hope it turns out as well as possible for conservatives. But we need Democrats to make that happen. But in the meantime, let's talk about the wonderful products over at MyPillow. We've spent a lot of time talking about the pillows themselves, the sheets, the towels, so much more. But don't forget about My Slippers from MyPillow. Yes, they took 2 years to develop to ensure they're the highest in quality and comfort. And I can attest, they are of the highest in quality and comfort. I'm not a slippers guy, but I love My Slippers. And right now, with our promo code Martini at MyPillow.com, you can get your own set of My Slippers for 50% off.
My Slippers are durable, and you can wear them all day, indoors, outdoors, wherever you like. They're made from beautiful leather suede, have cozy faux fur linings, and an indoor-outdoor sole. They come in moccasin or slip-on style. They're available in a variety of colors, and they come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 1-year limited warranty. But you have to hear about the 3-tier cushioning system. The first layer is the MyPillow patent fill. They took the MyPillow patented foam that you know and love and created a solid layer to create incredible comfort. The second layer is the Comfort Memory Foam, which provides that micro comfort and support so you can wear these slippers all day. And the third layer is the patented Impact Gel, which is made from U.S. soybeans, and it's revolutionary in absorbing impact and relieving pressure.
For a limited time, you can get the My Slippers 50% off. Go to MyPillow.com and click on the Radio Listeners Square, enter the promo code Martini, or call 800-874-0104. Now, while you're there, take advantage of the deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, and the MyPillow towel sets. But you can only save that 50% on the new My Slippers with our promo code Martini. Call 800-874-0104 or visit MyPillow.com today. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini. And for that, we head back to the White House and Press Secretary Jen Psaki. She's been spending a lot of time with us here on the 3 Martini Lunch, but she's, trust me, earned every single minute of it. This was Monday. She was addressing a question from the press corps about a comment that President Biden made on Friday when he was meeting in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister of India, where he said in an offhand comment that the Indian press corps was much better behaved than the U.S. press corps. And so Jen Psaki's explanation for that is, you guys keep bringing up stuff he doesn't want to talk about.
And I think what he said is that they're not always on point. Now, I know that isn't something that anyone wants to hear in here, but what I think he was conveying is, today he might want to talk about COVID vaccines. Some of the questions were about that. He might want to talk about, and some of the questions are not always about the topic he's talking about in that day.
So, Jim, imagine that. I mean, we just had 4 years of cable news chyrons of Trump to talk about blank, comma, amid ... which is what the media wanted to talk about. So the idea that Biden might get a usually not even a hostile question about a topic he'd rather not discuss, that's not usually how this works.
No. So here's the thing. I think it's a lame excuse from Jen Psaki, but we wouldn't really expect anything different. But I think the probably more interesting thing. So if you read Richard Ben Kramer's What It Takes, which is about the 1988 presidential campaign, Biden is one of the 8 presidential candidates that he profiles, including Bob Dole, the eventual winner, George H.W. Bush, Michael Dukakis. And there's this insecurity that comes through about Joe Biden, the sense that he, let's face it, most Americans do not spend a lot of time thinking about the state of Delaware unless they're driving through it. Being one of the, biggest fish in the sea of Delaware is not really going to turn people's heads. And so you can kind of see this insecurity that comes out in Biden, and sometimes very explicitly with the press. In that race, really vehement one where he says, "I bet I have a higher IQ than you do." And all of the times Biden has boasted about things, about being at the top of his class and doubled, all the number of times Biden has exaggerated his accomplishments. It kind of comes from this elemental level of discomfort of who he is and his fear that people are laughing at him or people don't take him seriously. And for as much as you might say, oh, he shouldn't feel that way, it was, I believe, Barack Obama who was listening to a long speech from Biden and passed a note to an aide saying, "Please shoot me now." Don't shoot either Barack Obama or Joe Biden, by the way. But the idea that even Joe Biden's colleagues who worked with him found him kind of insufferable and a loudmouth and a blowhard and kind of, a somewhat annoying persona and nowhere near as big a deal as he is in his own mind. I think this comes through pretty regularly. I think there's this prickliness to Biden. I think that a lot of what we saw on the campaign trail of 2020 was this sense of projection on the part of the media that, yes, Joe Biden had been this, malarkey, the wacky neighbor of the Obama administration. But that now he'd kind of grown into the role. He turned into the elder statesman of the Democratic Party. And I think, Greg, now, close to, 9 months, approaching a year of his presidency, in terms of being an elder statesman, Greg, I think we can say he's got the first part down. The statesman part, that's a little bit tougher. And in the end, he's the same guy, that same insecurity, that same guy who bristles at being criticized and bristles at accusations he's not doing a good job and stuff like that. And sometimes it just comes out as a real, defensive outburst, like, that was 4 or 5 days ago, or, come on, man, and all that kind of stuff. So he's, somebody once said there are 2 types of people who run for president: people who want to be somebody and people who want to do something. I think we're much better with presidents who want to do something. Right? That's what the job is. If you want to be somebody, if you have some sort of insecurity, if you have some sort of need, well, then that's going to lead your presidency in all kinds of bad directions. And I kind of feel like this is what we're seeing with Biden, is that he really wants to be the grand leader and all that kind of stuff. But you can see this in the, we were talking about our last martini of the negotiations on Capitol Hill. Biden's not telling the progressives, you're going to have to take half a loaf. Sorry, welcome to governing. This is how it works. And he's not saying to Sinema and Manchin, you got to get on board with it. He just wants everybody to get along. And that's generally an amiable or good approach. But it also means it's not really leading. It's not saying this is what we have to do. And I think he's going to run into trouble with that. And oh, by the way, if you don't like being criticized, don't run for president of the United States.
Could you only bring up the topics that make me look good, please?
Right. I mean, what do you think they're going to talk about?
Anyway, Jim, on that note, quite a day. Let's do it again tomorrow. See you then.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. We're very grateful for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Get us on those home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday, and please join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.